Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam, and this is the 16th episode of my backyard plant propagation series. This is going to be the last episode of actually taking cuttings and putting them into the house. It's mid-August now, and these types of cuttings that we've been taking from this year's growth that have hardened off a little, these plants are going to start to go to sleep. Those aren't going to work as effectively. We can transition later in the fall to doing hardwood cuttings that are older, and I'll start the series back over then. I'll do a season 2. This will be the last episode of putting cuttings into the house, but I'm going to come back in 3 or 4 weeks, pull everything out of the house, see where everything is, and then go through how to overwinter them. That's very important. Everybody's going to need to know if you've rooted anything this season on how to take care of it the first winter. So we'll go through that, and I'll also go through some things that I learned from the little hoop house, and especially my little side project under my deck with that little box. We've put some things in. I learned quite a bit from that. So I'll go over those things in the final episode. But I'm going to skip about 3 weeks, and so this stuff has a little bit of time to completely root in before I get to that. So anyway, today I've got some Steeds Hollies, which are, Steeds is like an upright holly, similar to sky pencil, but a little bit wider. I've got some Vitex I'm going to do. Vitex is like similar to a crepe myrtle. Becomes a small ornamental tree, but it has these little purple flowers on top of it. Should be super easy to root. I've got some Indian Hawthorns, which I have not done during this season. And then I've got some additional blueberries. I had done a flat of blueberries on the blueberry propagation video, and that was more properly timed in mid to late June or early July, maybe it was. I'm gonna try these here in mid-August. The cuttings look absolutely perfect. They've got the right color, they've got new growth. They've got all the things that I would look for in taking cuttings. I just don't know if I have enough time between mid-August and much cooler nights and shorter days to get them rooted in. So the blueberries are more of an experiment for me to see if you can do them this late in the summer. So anyway, let's get started. As I always say, the soil mix I'm using and the dip and grow and the flats and the pruners I'm using and how I collected the cuttings and all these details about what got me to this point are in the previous videos, so definitely catch up on those. If you have any questions, almost certainly the answer to whatever question you have if you're just starting on this video is in the previous ones. So I'm going to get started on these Steeds Hollies. These are super easy. All we need is this straight piece right here. We want that green wood. The older wood starts to turn kind of a gray color. We definitely don't want it. It will take much too long to root. I could probably get 2 out of this piece, almost certainly. It's, 5 inches long or so. I could definitely get 2 out of it. I've got so much material on these plants that I don't really need to do that. I'm just going to take off the newest material from the very top of it, strip off the bottom leaves. You can put a fresh cut on it, maybe at a 45-degree angle if you want to, and you can scar the edge of the bottom of it if you want to as well. Any of those things will help give additional places where it will callus and eventually root. I'll dip this in a dip and grow, stick it down, as always, about a 1/2 inch, maybe a little more, and then pinch it in tight so that it's not too deep in that cell. And again, these are very quick. I'm going to take the new growth off. I can just pull every one of those leaves off in a single motion. Put a fresh cut on it at an angle, put a little mark on the edge of it, taking that bark off the side, dip it, stick it in a 1/2 inch, pinch it in. So I'm going to go ahead and do 2 or 3 rows of these Steeds Hollies. So there's 3 rows of Steeds Hollies. I'm going to start on these Vitex, and I can take a long piece off the plant like this, and if I go up above the second group of leaves right there, and I take off the bottom 2 leaves like this, and then I'll take off one side. That's absolutely perfect cutting on these. We can go and put a fresh cut on it if we want to, put a wound on the side of it just like that. Dip it, again, about a 1/2 inch down, pinch it in very well like that. And we can continue to do that. This wood on this, the same thing. I don't want that old wood where it's hardened off. I want this where it's transitioning in color from the light green it is on the new growth down to this kind of in-between color. You'll notice that if you're taking cuttings off of Vitex, the bottom part of the plant will be super woody and it'll be gray stems. These, the wood that's been on it maybe a month or 2 will be in transition between the really soft cutting and that. But I can keep going up, just up to the second leaf like that. Take that bottom one off, cut that side piece off, put a fresh cut on it, wound it, just like that, dip it, stick it in there, 1/2 inch, pinch it in, just like that. I'm gonna do maybe 3 rows of these Vitex. There's the Vitex. This Indian Hawthorns will typically come like a cluster like this if you cut it right behind where this year's growth is. This plant was pruned, and then it had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces or so that came out, branched out from it. We can actually take this year's growth right back to there. All we need is that little straight piece right there where that wood is turned slightly brown right there. The problem is we got to get all this new growth out of here though. We can't have any of that new growth. It'll just use way too much water. Any of these big leaves need to go like that. I'll get it down to something like that, and I can take another leaf off, but that's not bad. We'll put a wound on it like that. Hope you can see that pretty well. It's about 2 inches long now, cut down to 3 leaves. All the new growth is gone on it. I'll dip that and again stick it down just a little. Any of these leaves that fall off of anything while you're doing this, you definitely want to be removing those from the tray. It's just an extra thing that will hold water in place and end up drowning your cuttings. You want to have good air movement around everything. Again, I'm going to take this back to the center of that plant. I'll take these lower leaves off, take that new growth off the top, just like that. I can wound it, dip it, stick it in there about 1/2 inch down, pinch it in tight, just like that. I'll do 1 more of these. Hopefully you can see it well. But I'm just taking this year's growth back to that center spot, just like that. So that's what I've got. I'll take this new growth right out of the top of it, and then I need to reduce the number of leaves on this one, just like that. Keep cleaning up my flat as I do this. Put my wound on it, just like that. Dip it, stick it in about 1/2 inch down and pinch it in. That's it. I'm going to do a couple rows of these Indian Hawthorns. I got 2 rows of Indian Hawthorns. Here's an example of the blueberries. They're absolutely perfect with that green stem in the middle, new growth on the top, very vigorous growth. They should root. This would definitely root, but I may have waited too late, so we'll find that out. I'm going to grab a lot of the leaves off the bottom of this. I'm going to take the new growth out of the top of it like that, and you can cut some height out of this. I'm putting an angle cut on the bottom of it. I can scrape it if I want to, like that. Maybe take off a leaf or 2 more. And that's a really nice looking blueberry cutting right there. Dip it, stick it in a little, and pinch it in. Got the same thing on these. These blueberries have nice, easy single pieces like this that are easy to root. I don't usually try to get 2 or 3 pieces on them because there's a difference in how hard the wood is as you go down the stem, and it's going to vary the rate at which they're going to root dramatically. And I just don't like that mixed together in the same tray. So I typically will just take the 1 piece off the top, maybe 6 inches long like that. Take the bottom leaves off, cut the new growth out of the top. You can put a fresh cut on the bottom since they were cut a while ago. Dip it, stick it in there, pinch it in. That's it. I'm going to finish this tray out with these 2 rows of blueberries. So I've got the tray finished up, and as always, I have labeled them with the Steeds, Vitex, Indian Hawthorn, and Tiff Blue blueberry, and I put the date on the back of them. So I'm going to stick this tray in the house, and like I say, this will be the last video of sticking cuttings for this season. The next video in this will be how to overwinter them. And then I'm going to get started with a season 2 later in the fall after it's colder and show you how to do a bottom heat system for doing conifers. Here's the tray with the blueberries and the Vitex that I just did. If you look down here, these rows of Sharon that I did last week have lost a few leaves. I just want to keep pointing this out, that you want to get rid of any leaves that fall off of anything. It doesn't mean they're not going to root, but if we leave those leaves on that soil will stay much wetter than the cells beside it. And these will still end up rooting in all likelihood. We may lose a few of them, but for the most part, they'll end up rooting as long as we don't keep them way too wet. But again, I think they're going to callus and root with no problem. I'll just continue to keep these leaves cleaned up out of this tray though. So anyway, like I say, there you go. There's 5 trays in here right now. In about 3 weeks, we'll pull them out, see what we got, and figure out how we're going to winterize them. Thanks for watching.